Page 72, The Dancing Fan. It was colder than I expected outside. I shivered, even with Lala warm against my back. I was in a long-sleeved t-shirt and pants. Mom had said that was the best thing to wear through customs, and I wished I had a hoodie, but they were all in my suitcase. Tehran didn't smell much different from Portland. I guess I had kind of expected everything to smell like rice. To be fair, most Persian households, even fractional ones like ours, smell at least a little bit like basmati rice. But Tehran's air was regular city air with a tang of smog to it and a bit less of Portland's rain-soaked earth smell. A scream split the night, like the piercing cry of a Nazgul, and I almost dropped Lala. Aye! Mamu, my real flesh and blood grandmother, was screaming and charging toward us. She crashed into Mom and grabbed her by the face, kissed her on both cheeks, left, right, left, then wrapped her in a hug strong enough to buckle a starship's hull. Mom laughed and hugged her mother for the first time in 17 years. It was the happiest I had ever seen her. Dai Jamshid had driven Mamu to Tehran, and we all piled into his silver SUV for the ride to Yazid. Mom sat up front with him, talking in Farsi and sharing a bag of tokmeh, roasted watermelon seeds, which are the favorite snack of true Persians everywhere. Dad sat in the back with Lala stretched across his lap. She had finally collapsed, though not before being hugged to within an inch of her life by Mamu and Dai Jamshid. I shared the middle with Mamu. Fariba Barami was a short woman. I had only seen her from the shoulders up before, but when she wrapped her arms around me, it was like she had 15 years' worth of hugs saved up just for me. She kept her arm draped across my back the whole ride, holding me against her. I studied her hands. I had never really seen my grandmother's hands before. Mamu kept her fingernails short and nicely manicured, painted pomegranate red. Her perfume smelled like peaches. She was so warm. She squeezed and squeezed me like she was worried I would blow out the window if she didn't hold on tight enough. Maybe she was trying to fit a lifetime of missed hugs into the one car ride. Maybe she was. Tell me about your school, Maman. School is okay, I guess. The socio-political climate of Chapel Hill High School seemed a little too complicated to get into with Mamu on a car ride, especially since I didn't want her to know that people called me D-bag and left bright blue fake testicles on my bicycle. I never wanted to talk about testicles with my grandmother. You have lots of friends? A girlfriend? My ears went straight to red alert. True Persians are heavily invested in the reproductive opportunities of their descendants. Not really, I said. The red alert was spreading to my cheeks. Not really was the safest form of no I could come up with. I couldn't stand to disappoint my grandmother. Why? Mamu had a funny way of curling the ends of her words to make them into questions. You are so handsome, Maman. I didn't know how she could say that. I was oily and puffy from 32 hours of flying, and I still had the caldera of the solar system's largest volcano smoldering between my eyebrows. Besides, no one ever noticed me, not the way they noticed soulless minions of orthodoxy like Chip Cusimano, who really was handsome. I shrugged, but the shrug turned into a yawn. All the temporal dilations we had gone through were catching up with me. You are tired, Maman. I'm okay. Why don't you have a sleep? It's still a few hours to Yazid. She pulled me closer still so I could lean my head on her shoulder and ran her fingers through the curls of my hair. I am so happy you are here. Me too. Her hand was warm, but her fingers sent shivers of euphoria through my scalp. She kissed the crown of my head over and over again until it was wet where her tears had trickled down and run into my hair. I didn't mind, though. I love you, Maman. Grandma and Oma, Dad's moms, didn't say that very often. It's not that they didn't love me and Lala, but they were full of Teutonic reserve and didn't express affection very often. Mamu was not like that. For Fariba Barami, love was an opportunity, not a burden. I swallowed away the lump in my throat. I love you, Mamu. I only half slept on the drive to Yazid. I was too tired to fall all the way asleep, and even though Mamu was soft and warm, leaning up against her wasn't a terribly comfortable position to sleep in. So I dozed and floated on the clouds of Farsi that blew my way from the front seat of Dai Jamshid's SUV. It reminded me of when I was little, and Mom chanted to me in Farsi every night before bedtime. It's hard to describe Farsi chanting. The way Mom drew her voice out like the notes of a cello as she recited poems by Rumi or Hafez. I didn't know what they meant, but that didn't matter. It was quiet and soothing. It was Mom's job to put me to sleep because Dad got me too excited before bedtime. He would sit on my bed and tuck me in, and then he'd start telling me a story, leaving gaps for me to fill in with heroes and monsters. We told the story together. There's a lot I don't remember from back then, the years before my own Great Depression. Dr. Howell says antidepressants can do that sometimes, dull the memory. Plus, I was pretty little at the time anyway. But I remember story time with Dad because I remember the night that it stopped. It was about 6 months before Lala was born. Dad came to tuck me in. He kissed me, said, "Love you," and turned to leave. "Dad, don't I get a story?" I squeaked. My voice was much squeakier back then, like a cheese curd. Dad blinked at me. He sighed, "Not tonight, Darius." And then he left, just walked out of my bedroom. I lay there and waited for Mom to come chant to me, and we didn't tell stories anymore after that. I didn't get why Dad had stopped. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. "You didn't do anything wrong," Mom explained. "I can tell you a story." But it wasn't the same. Shireen Kellner was an expert chanter, but a lackluster storyteller. And no matter the story she told, the one I told myself, the one I understood deep down was this: Stephen Kellner didn't want to tell me stories anymore. "Wake up, Darius Chan." Mamu scratched my scalp, which sent goosebumps down my neck. "We're here." I blinked in the gray morning, sat up, and took my first look at Yazid. To be honest, even though I had seen plenty of pictures, I still kind of expected Yazid to look like a scene from Aladdin. Dirt streets lined with palm trees, domed palaces made out of sparkling alabaster, laden camels carrying goods to a bazaar of wooden stalls covered in jewel-colored fabric awnings. There were no camels anywhere in sight, despite what Fatty Boulder might have claimed. I didn't even know camel jockey was a legitimate slur until the first time he called me one. Trent Boulder was not particularly creative, but he was thorough and subtle enough to evade detection by the enforcers of Chapel Hill High School's zero-tolerance policy toward racial and ethnic slurs. The streets of Mamu's neighborhood didn't look so different from the streets back home. Dull gray asphalt. The houses didn't look so different either, except they were made of whitish bricks instead of seamless siding. Some had ornate wooden double doors in front with elaborate metal knockers. They almost reminded me of hobbit hole doors, except they weren't round. Dai Jamshid pulled up in front of a white house that looked more or less like all the others. It was a single story with a thin strip of yard full of sparse, scrubby grass in front. There were no cacti anywhere, another oversight on Fatty Boulder's part because I looked it up, and cacti are actually native to the Americas. Dai Jamshid parked the SUV under the shade of a gigantic walnut tree that hung over the street and thrust its roots beneath the cracking sidewalk. "Aga Stephen," Dai Jamshid said. He pronounced it Stephen, which is what a lot of true Persians called Dad. In Farsi, you couldn't start a word with two consonants. You had to put a vowel between them, which is why a few people called Dad set to even. "Wake up, Aga Stephen." His voice sounded like the crack of a whip, and he was always smiling, eyebrows arched and mischievous. My uncle had two discrete eyebrows, not a single connecting hair between them, which was deeply reassuring, because I had always worried about growing a Persian unibrow. Dai Jamshid started unloading our stuff from the back. I shook the sleep off my head and slid out of the SUV after Mamu while Dad tried to rouse Lala. "Let me help you, Dai." "No, you go in. I've got it, Darius Chan." We had a lot of suitcases, and Dai Jamshid only had 2 hands. It was clear he needed help, but he was genetically predisposed to refuse it. It was my first official tarof in Iran. Tarof is a Farsi word that is difficult to translate. It's the primary social cue for Iranians, encompassing hospitality and respect and politeness all in one. In theory, tarof means putting others before yourself. In practice, it means when someone comes to your house, you have to offer them food. But since your guest is supposed to tar off too, they have to refuse, and then you, the host, must tar off back, insisting that it's really no trouble at all and that they absolutely must eat, and so on until one party gets too bewildered and finally gives in. I never got the hang of tar offing. It's not an American social cue. When Mom met Dad's parents for the first time, they offered her a drink, which she politely declined, and that was that. She really did want something to drink, but she didn't know how to go about it. She had yet to learn the proper American social cues. Every Thanksgiving, Dad tells the story again, and every year Mom laughs and says she's going to kill him if he tells it one more time. Maybe joking is the primary American social cue. "Please," I said, "I want to help." "It's fine." Like Mamu, Dai Jamshid had a funny way of twisting the end of his words. "You are tired. You are a guest." Both of those statements were technically true, but truth was irrelevant when it came to Tarof. Mom came to my rescue. "Jamshid." She reached into the SUV to extract Lala's unconscious body from Dad. My sister was pretty much a rag doll when she was asleep. Let Darius help. Dad unfolded himself from the back of the SUV, while Dai Jamshid argued with Mom in Farsi. For a beautiful poetic language, it sounded harsh as Klingon when they fought, especially when Mamu joined in and turned it into a three-way argument. Lala still hung in my mom's arms. I didn't know how she could sleep through it. Dad yawned and swung around doing trunk twists. He blinked at me and cocked his head toward Mom. I shrugged. Taraf, I whispered, and Dad noticed. This was not the first time Dad and I had been stuck spectating at a Tarafing match we couldn't understand. We could have had all the luggage taken inside in the time it took them to allow us to help. Finally, Mom prevailed, and Dai Jamshid handed me Lala's roller bag. Thank you, Darius-chan. Sure. Lala's suitcase was twice as heavy as mine because it was also crammed full of the stuff Mom had brought with her from America. It wasn't just stuff for our family. When Mom announced we were going to Iran, every Persian family in the Willamette Valley started calling her, asking if she could take something to Iran for a relative or bring something back. It would be Mamu's job to distribute what Mom had brought after we left. It was all random stuff, too. A particular kind of shampoo or a face cream or even Tylenol PM, which apparently you couldn't buy in Iran. I grabbed my own suitcase, slung my Kellner and Newton messenger bag around the retractable handle, and followed Mamu up the driveway. Where's Babu? In bed. Mamu lowered her voice as she led us inside. He wanted to come to the airport, but he was too tired. He is sleeping more. I got this sort of flutter in my stomach. Meeting Mamu, really meeting her, but not Babu, felt wrong, like ending an episode on a cliffhanger. I was anxious to meet my grandfather, but I was a little scared too. That's normal, right? The lights were still off, and the narrow windows didn't let in much of the morning sun. Where they did, thin shafts of light struck the dust motes suspended in the air and lit the photos on the walls. There were a lot of photos on the walls. Some were framed, singly or in groups, but plenty were tacked in place with tape or pinned up by clothespins or tucked into whatever corner would hold them. I wanted to stop and look at them, the Barami family portrait gallery, but instead I kicked off my Vans on the doormat and followed Mamu down the hall that ran the length of the house. She stopped at the last room on the right. Is this one okay? Sure. It has a washroom. She pointed to a door in the corner. Mom had warned me about Persian bathrooms. Are you hungry, Maman? No, I don't think so. The truth was I couldn't tell anymore. Our journey through the space-time continuum, followed by my near brush with state-sanctioned torture at the hands of Customs Officer 2, had left me feeling disoriented and gross. You're sure? It's no problem. It was my second tear-off in Iran, and this time Mom wasn't around to help me. I'm sure. I think I'm going to shower if that's okay. And maybe take a nap? Okay, there are towels for you in the closet. Thanks. Mamu pulled me down into a hug, kissed me on both cheeks, and then went to help put Lala to bed. I left Lala's suitcase in the hall, pulled my own in after me, and shut the door. The room was maybe half the size of my bedroom back home, a twin bed with olive green covers and matching green curtains covering the small round window above it. A tiny wooden desk stood in the corner, with more photos on the wall above it. I recognized Dai Jamshid and Dai Sohail and their kids, but there were strangers in some of them too. A few were really old black and whites from when Mamu was growing up. One was familiar. A photo of Mamu with her parents. Mamu was my age, with long straight hair that fell all the way down to her chest. She wasn't smiling, but she looked like she wanted to. Mom had a copy of that photo framed in our living room at home on the wall closest to the kitchen and the turbo lift door. It was the only picture of my great-grandparents on Mamu's side that we had. I peeled off my shirt. It was sticky and musty from the day's travel. My face was so greasy I thought it might slide off right onto the floor. I needed a shower. More than that, though, I really had to pee. I stared at the toilet, a perfect porcelain bowl set in the floor with rose-colored tiles arranged all around in an abstract mosaic. Mom had warned me about Mamu toilets. In Iran, especially in older homes, you were supposed to squat over the toilet instead of sitting on it. It was considered much more healthy. I hoped my leg muscles were strong enough when the time came. As it was, I circled the toilet, studying it like a Klingon warrior sizing up his enemy. I wasn't sure exactly how I was supposed to use it without making a mess, but I really did have to pee. I showered, pulled on some shorts, and got my medicine out. But then I decided I should take it when I got back up so I could have it with breakfast. The air in the bedroom was too close. It was not humid, but I could feel every single air molecule as it brushed against my freshly scrubbed face. There was a box fan tucked into the corner, so I dragged it away from the wall and turned it on. It buzzed a little bit, and I had a brief vision of it experiencing a non-passive failure and exploding into a billowing cloud of smoke and motor particles. But then it got up to speed. The fan would not stay still. It jiggled and jittered across the floor, dancing toward me. I angled it so it would dance away from me instead. But by the time I'd gotten my pants off and pulled back the sheets, the fan had danced itself around to face me once more, shaking and shimmying inexorably toward my bed. That fan was evil. I pulled the dancing fan to the middle of the room and then propped my suitcase against it to hold it in place. It rattled ominously and hopped back and forth on its rubber feet. The suitcase blocked some of the airflow, but at least I knew it wouldn't creep up on me while I was sleeping. I slipped into bed and faced the wall, but I could feel that fan. It was watching me, waiting for me to lower my guard. It was deeply unnerving.